Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to get started in a few seconds about how to create anchor content. And so it's a fundamental activity in social selling is putting content out there. But before we do, I just wanted to share a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. Just a way to say thank you for doing that, because when you do, LinkedIn then lets others know, hey, we're live and there's people in the training, and it invites more people. So my tip for you today is be careful of constructive procrastination. I paid attention to this term a long time ago, and I've been keeping it with me for forever in my personal and professional life. Constructive procrastination means you're procrastinating from doing something. You know you need to do it. I have to do this thing, this task, whatever it is, but I'm not doing it. I'm doing anything else but that. And a lot of times we do procrastination where it's just a complete wasted thing. We're just going through our phone, looking at Facebook or something. You're procrastinating getting up and cleaning the dishes, or in the work environment, it's the same kind of thing or something. But constructive procrastination is doing something that you can rationalize that should be done. But the problem is it's not your top priority activity. So in our organization, we all pay attention to a lot of the projects we want to be working on, efforts we want to be working on. And but then we only focus on the very first highest priority. We said, that's the one we're saying we want to get done. Yes, we could work on this other task and it'd be really helpful, but it's not our number one priority. Constructive procrastination like that takes you away from your number one priority task for the day or for the week or for the month, et cetera. So just watch out for constructive procrastination. Look at your day-to-day life and go, am I doing something that's a constructive procrastination of the task that I should be doing? That's just a quick tip for those of you who show up early and on time. I really appreciate that. So it's my thank you for you. Let me go ahead and get my ducks in a row here, and we will get into the formal side of the training. Okay, today's topic in social selling, we're going to talk about creating anchor content for federal buyers. If you don't know this, I've been on social media for a long time. And it's funny, just as a sidebar, I hear people talk about like how long they've been doing it. First off, how long you've been doing it doesn't really matter, because technology changes constantly. But I've been doing it so long that I've been here before YouTube, right? Before the majority of the internet. Back in the 80s, they launched this thing called Prodigy. It was the very beginning of the web. But I've been doing it a long time. But in the professional world, in the GovCon world, I really have been doing it for since about 2007. I used it for my last company. And since 2018, I've been using it for the GovCon Chamber. And in the last 5 years is where I really have doubled down and got very good at using it. And this is why I want to teach you what I do. So I get about $2 million views for the GovCon Chamber through the activity that we do every year. So we're pulling in a lot of views. But the thing I want to get you to keep in mind is that the amount of views are not as important as who's viewing your content. And when you do the right anchor content, and I'll talk about that in a minute, when you do the right anchor content, you're going to start pulling the right people to you. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to just show you exactly how I create my content, some of the things I do. That way you can go off and start doing this same activity. You're not going to do it at the volume of content posting that I do. But if you start posting content that is around your core competency, your area of expertise, then you're going to start becoming visible. And I describe here that establishing your brand is basically being visible, right? Sometimes we get overly complicated with our explanation of what is marketing or branding. Forget about all that nonsense, right? It's marketing 101 in a college. What it really means is your brand is visibility. How people see you is a different thing. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So in today's training, I'm going to walk you through how the anchor content that you create can help you create your brand, establish the brand for your company. Second thing I want to cover is how you can come up with ideas of what an anchor content could be. And an anchor content basically is a big piece of content that you will then do other things with. And so I want to give you brainstorming activities or suggestions on how you can come up with those ideas. And then the third thing we're going to wrap up with is I'm going to show you examples of how I break down an anchor content set of framework in there. So I'm going to walk you through a lot of different stuff. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. It's the same thing here when you think about posting anchor content. When you start getting good at that, you will have repeatable, predictable results of people seeing you, the branding increase, your brand awareness being increasing in the actual target audience, the federal market. Before we get too far, I just wanted to thank the GovCon Chamber of Commerce sustaining members. Through your generosity, we're able to provide training like this, other content that we put out. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of all those small businesses and other people who are benefiting from the content that the GovCon Chamber of Commerce puts out. We don't have funding from the federal government or from large primes. We have funding from sustaining members like you. So just again, thank you. Okay, let's dive into how anchor content can establish your brand. One of the things that I really push on is branding is not your logo or your colors. I see people go through small businesses in the government space, spend tens and tens of thousands of dollars branding their company. And you'll see them come out with fancy slick sheets or something and colors and trying to establish it, but it does zero to increase their visibility with the buyer. And to me, branding should increase your visibility. Your brand is what people think you do. If somebody says, what does that company do? They can answer it. Somebody else can answer it. That means your brand awareness. They're aware of your brand, right? Brand is what people think of you. So if you think that, if somebody says, oh, what does Neil's old company do? They do SharePoint. It's like, okay, well, what do they think of you? They do great job with SharePoint. They've done some major projects throughout DoD and civilian agencies. So they think highly of you. It's not just that's what they do, but they do a really good job with it. And they're trusted by large agencies. Brand is your differentiator. So when you think about differentiating yourself from your competitors, it's not just making a statement. Sometimes when you create content, we'll get into this, anchor content can help you make that differentiator, which then in turn is your brand. I go to this company for their SharePoint advice or advice on Microsoft products, etc. That's your brand. It's this differentiator that's who I go to as a trusted advisor. Have you met them? No, not even yet. And then brand attracts your ideal customer. When you create the content that you should be creating around your core competency for your company, you're going to attract the people who want to do that. And when you gear your content towards the federal market, the way agencies think, you're going to attract more and more agency buyers and less of the audience who is not your ideal customer. And so it's really important when you think about branding that anchor content, when you start creating it, when you create anchor content and put it out there, it can help people understand what you do. If you're talking about SharePoint, it's like, okay, they do SharePoint. If you really are explaining in your anchor content some of the projects maybe you have done as it relates to something you're describing, people begin to think more highly of you. They begin to trust your company through the trust of your content that you're putting out. So anyways, think about it this way, and let's move on and talk about how can we come up with ideas for anchor content. Right. And so again, as a description, anchor content is just one big piece of information. In the old days, we might have called it a white paper, maybe a 25-page white paper. Nowadays, it could be various different things that you can do. I'm going to go with the idea of long form content in my examples today. But you can think about this very video that I'm doing. I could use this as my anchor content on how do you create anchor content. And then I could create a bunch of other ideas from that. So as you watch what I'm doing, the idea of an anchor content is really you're just trying to do a big piece of content around something that your customers really want to know about. You guys, for example, might want to know, how do you create anchor content that creates or attracts your buyer? I'm creating that content for you. It makes it an anchor content for me. We'll talk about ways that you can come up with your own ideas, beginning with using AI, right? So AI is here to stay. It just is. So figure out how to use it, figure out how to get great at it. Not good, great. But so here's a ChatGPT prompt, and I'm going to show you what the results look like in a second. But I wanted to, one of the things you should understand about the way I use AI tools is I just talk to it like it's a colleague or a friend or whatever. And so I'm just diving in. So I broke up a larger prompt into these bullets so it's easier to see. But let me just go through it with you. So I told ChatGPT, look, I'm an expert. I'm a subject matter expert in artificial intelligence. but I need some help brainstorming. Could you help me brainstorm? And I started off by saying, I want to create a long form article as a piece of marketing content, but I need topic ideas. Okay, so ChatGPT is putting it in its head. All right, Neil needs some help with this. And Johnny is the name of my ChatGPT. And so I'm talking to Johnny here. I say the intended audience are federal agency buyers and other personnel. So I'm communicating to them. It's not commercial world. It's not state and local. It's federal agencies. So keep that in mind when you're giving me topic ideas. And then I said politely, because AI is going to take rule the world someday. Please give me a list of 20 topics. I want each topic to be 15 words or less. And these topics, I want them to serve as an anchor content in which I can then repurpose later through social media. I'm hoping Johnny already knows what I mean by repurposing, right? You might not know it as much as the AI tool does, but ChatGPT knows exactly what I mean when I'm saying I want to repurpose later through social media. And then the last prompt of this greater prompt that I did is I said, I'm really driving to the meat of what I want its help on. I want to be seen as the artificial intelligence expert. So base those 20 suggestions you have off of that core competency. So this is the prompt I gave my ChatGPT, and it saved me like an hour of trying to come up with ideas, at least an hour, right? And here's what I got. So when I came back, there's the prompt, by the way. You see it highlighted at the top? That was the exact prompt I put in, and I just typed, hey, ChatGPT, can you help me out? And then here's the response. So it came back and it said, here's a list of 20 topic ideas that relate to being an AI expert for the federal agency buyers. And it started giving me these topics, and I love these topics. When you think about an anchor, a piece of anchor content, a large thing, there's ones in here that really move forward. So I'm looking at leveraging AI for enhanced data analytics. I know that's a big deal, right? If I'm an AI expert and data is part of AI, if I'm an AI expert, then I see that bullet number 3. I'm like, hey, leveraging AI for enhanced data analytics in federal agencies. Oh, I can see that. That's a good one. AI and predictive analytics. That one's a little too fancy for me. AI-driven cybersecurity. Now, that's a really interesting one because I got several customers who are cybersecurity firms, and I'm trying to teach people integrate AI into the way you communicate with your customers, because every customer, every federal agency is looking to figure out how can we integrate AI into our day-to-day activity. So coming down, I just got in seconds, right? I put this prompt in up here, right here. I put this prompt in and I got 20 topics. Now, I'm not going to let ChatGPT write it for me because I know what I'm doing. I'm an expert in this, and theoretically you are too, but you can definitely use ChatGPT to get it to give you some ideas. So let me come back into here. So this was the prompt and how I came up with ideas, right? Now, I'm not using those ideas. I'm going to move on to the next one the way I chose to do it. And I want to give you a couple of examples on how I came up with some outline for an anchor content. So here, I'm doing an example of anchor content for artificial intelligence primer for federal agencies. The purpose in my head is I want to introduce AI to a lot of those federal agencies and the leaders within the agencies who are just overwhelmed by what's going on with AI. They're seeing all this stuff, and I really want something that's pretty simple. And so I'm trying to come up with ideas. These ideas, I came up with them on my own. If you struggle to figure out an outline, feel free to use ChatGPT. It's no different than people looking on the internet to get ideas. Get ideas wherever you can. You're the expert. You'll know what you're going to be writing. But I've been doing this a long time, right? So I came up with this set of 7 or 8 bullets for it, right? The first thing I want to do is an introduction to artificial intelligence. I want to give them a high level, probably 5th grader level thing. And so I said, I want to write that. There's an organization called the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource. This is a major new organization within the federal government that is there to serve as a resource to all these federal agencies. I would bet 99% of the agencies and the leaders, et cetera, don't even know about this organization. And so I would tell them about it, and I would probably not go too technical in it. They can go read this organization's own information, but I would talk about how to take advantage of NAIRR's tools and resources and what they do. Consider doing these 3 things, something like that, right? I would talk about popular AI tools. That's an important thing. These leaders within agencies, they're hearing about ChatGPT because it's so big. I got to tell you, I've been doing this a while, and I could not name a second tool. I know there's many of you who could name like 5 or 10 of them, but all I know is ChatGPT, and I'm an engaged person, I would say, right? So imagine what the agency people are like. They're so busy with the mission. How much about AI could they know? And so I might create a section in my long form content or my anchor content that says, hey, here's the popular tools. And maybe at the bottom, I say, here's some also runs, but here's the top 5 tools you'll hear about. And I just want to say, and I might even put in a table, kind of a quick little comparison, and not a product comparison for somebody else, but just what I think would be important. How easy is it maybe? How much can you expect people to use it? And that goes into bullet number 4 here. Excuse me, the 4th bullet is signs of homegrown AI usage. So I put this in as a header that I would put in my long form content because I want to sit there and say to the agencies, how do you watch inside your agency to see if your team is getting ahead of you? If people in your agency are getting ahead of you, they're using AI in their activities. Maybe they're putting stuff out as it relates to the mission, but now instead of writing it themselves, they're using ChatGPT or whatever, right? So I know that there's these things called homegrown solutions, homegrown applications, et cetera. Well, I would want to be able to communicate, hey, here's how you can watch for it, not to stop it, but maybe get ahead of it and put some governance around it. That's actually another thing I might put in here, right? Top 10 tips for establishing AI governance within your command. And that goes with ethical AI. There's a whole DoD document out there about responsible artificial intelligence. This is a huge thing. They did this, I don't know, months and months ago where they put it out, really thought about, we need to think about the ethics around AI. And so I might put that in there and talk about it. And again, remember, this example I'm giving you is all an anchor content, this long form article. In this case, let's think of it like a blog. I would write it first as a blog with all these different sections. If I put it into Microsoft Word, it would no longer be a blog. We would call it a white paper, right? But it's all the same thing. It's called long form content. And I call it anchor content because you can then build content off of it or pull content from it, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, and then top 10 agencies that are spending on AI. So top 10 federal agencies by budget. I know that information. I actually just put a post out about it today showing, I think, the top 15 or 20 agencies and their AI spends, which is huge. It was eye-opening to me. Agencies here might be interested as well because maybe they go talk to that agency and say, hey, we're thinking about doing something in our agency. I see you guys are spending a lot. How are you procuring AI services? How are you doing this or that? And then the last one is federal artificial intelligence strategic plan. So if I'm doing a long form piece of content and anchor content, I could put an appendix or something at the bottom that lists out the Department of Veterans Affairs or USDA or Army's AI strategic plans. Many of these agencies have their own strategic plans. I've been sharing them out over the last couple of months, right? And so that could be something helpful because if this command is trying to create some sort of strategic plan for themselves, even if they're a lower level command and they just create an internal strategic plan around AI, they might welcome looking at other agencies. What have you done so that I can learn from you? Which ironically is the whole point of ChatGPT. Okay, let me give you another example that relates to me. I've done, and so here I just want to give you another sample anchor content that I'm using, and I'm calling it Federal Matchmaking Success for the moment. That's my long form. And I'm actually able to build this pretty quickly because I've been teaching this for a couple of years now, but I broke it up and I said, look, I'm going to have 5 sections within this long form content. How to prepare for federal marketing or matchmaking. So how to prepare before you go. And that target audience is small businesses. How to network at matchmaking events. So you show up at an event, you're kind of nervous, you don't know anybody. How can you go up and talk to people? How can you engage with them? Federal matchmaking success in 10 to 15 minutes. And so here I'm envisioning that as I sit down at a table or you sit at a table, how can you have success? Instead of just sitting there, giving a capability statement, talking and then leaving and feeling like it was a dud, right? I want you to be able to have success. Number 4, top federal matchmaking follow-up tasks in order to build relationships. And this is where I tell you, after you leave that matchmaking event, what do? Do this, do this, do this, do this for 10 times or 10 things, right? And so I can lay that out. That's a good piece. And keep that one in mind because I'm going to give you examples in the next slide. And then why federal matchmaking events are bad for industry and agencies, right? So I'm telling you how to do it, how to have success, et cetera. And then I'm telling you, it sucks, don't do it, right? And I don't really say don't do it, but it goes back to this constructive procrastination. I feel like people go to those events instead of picking up the phone and calling people, right? So pick up the phone and call people and go to conferences and go to matchmaking, but don't go to matchmaking or conferences as your primary way of meeting people. That's constructive procrastination, going back to my tip. Anyway, so this is an example of how I do the outline, right? So you can brainstorm some ideas for an anchor topic, and then you brainstorm some ideas for like chapters within. If you stick to your core competency, elevators, office supplies, or office furniture, right? Cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, Microsoft 365. If you stick to your topic, you should be able to do this forever. And if you use ChatGPT to speed it up and say, hey, give me some ideas, you're like, oh, that's a good idea. You're not cheating. You're getting it to help you move forward. You're the expert who can evaluate its data. Okay, so this last main effort I want to talk about is how do you actually take an anchor piece of content and repurpose it? How can it help you with that brand, establishing the brand that I talked about? So it's one thing. So let's start with bullet number one, right? The long form blog, which you would put on your website, is what I'm calling at the moment the anchor content. You can use any piece of anchor content you want, like a video, and start there and do the bullets that I'm saying. But I'm going to use, for our example, a long form blog, a long blog that I'll put on my website, and that's the anchor content. And let's say it's around that matchmaking activity that I did, right? So from there, this is where it gets into how valuable an anchor content is to establishing a brand. Your brand is visibility. People know that you exist for what you exist, what do you sell, and they have an opinion of you. You're shaping that through this content that you're putting out, right? And so the second thing that I recommend you do, and you can shift these around in any order, but I'm just going to tell you how I wrote it. The second thing you can do is immediately after you post this on your blog, you can, I mean, not immediately, but you can wait a day or two, and then you can then post this on your LinkedIn profile. Inside of your LinkedIn profile, it's got blogs in there, but they call them articles. And so you can go in and add an article. And now you can add your article to your profile, right? When you do that, you can then put it on your profile's featured section so that when people land on your profile and view it, and I would be willing to bet like 50 to 100, 200 people are viewing your profile every quarter. That's a lot of people looking at your profile. And so on your profile, right on the very first screen of it is your featured section. If you take this LinkedIn article and put it there as well, now you're getting visibility, right? Increasing the visibility on that. So number three, you can repost this article to your company page. So your personal profile, you can put it in there. And when you go to your company page, you don't share it. You don't kind of rewrite it on there. You use the tool that is in your own profile where it says repost. And the reason you want to do this is because it'll put it on your company page. So anybody following your company page will now see it. But LinkedIn's algorithm and its metrics and everything it's tracking are actually pushing itself back to you. You want yourself and your own profile in LinkedIn to have more visibility than your company page. It's just the way it is. And we can talk later about that. And so when you put this long form content, this LinkedIn article or LinkedIn post onto your company page, do it in this way called reposting, and it'll give you the most value. So number four, you have people who are in your company, right? Some of you are one-person company, but many of you are in companies that are 25, 50, 100 people. Well, if you post something, a long-form content is so valuable, and you put it on your LinkedIn, this is the one you want to share, by the way. You put it on your LinkedIn profile, then you can have other people in your company repost it, same way I just said with company profile page, repost it to their profile. So imagine if you had 10 people in your company and they each put it out there, and now it's going out to a broader network. And it doesn't mean the first time you do this, you're going to get tons of people coming in, but you begin to do this on a consistent basis and you're rocking and rolling. And you don't have to do it like post it and then immediately everybody reshares it. It's okay if they do it like, the next day, 5 days, 20 days later. It doesn't matter as long as they're resharing this content out there. And it doesn't have to be everybody. People's LinkedIn profiles are their own, but you just look into your company and say, hey, who's willing to use your LinkedIn profile to help promote the company? If they're willing, then you just teach them how. That number four is about getting the whole staff involved in reposting your anchor content. So number five, you can post these in LinkedIn groups. And so same thing, right? You posted it on your profile in number two. You rewrote on LinkedIn for number two, the blog that you did in number one, right? And then you're just reposting for 3, 4, and 5, which is on the company page, on staff pages, and on within groups. And so I say that you should be in 10, right? If you're in the federal market, there's way more than 10 groups that serve the government market. I mean, DHS, the Homeland Security, has one group that's like 70,000 people belong to the group. So get out there, join some of these groups. There's a lot of groups, but if you join 10, you can take that anchor content that you created and put on your LinkedIn profile as an article. You can slowly share it to each of those groups to let other people know that you put it out there. By the way, never, ever, ever sell within an anchor content. You're just giving your information. Here's the information about it. Number 6, webinar, right? And so here's where we begin to change it up. Number 1 through 5 was about creating the anchor content and resharing it on LinkedIn, basically. Number 6 is creating a webinar from that anchor content. So if you remember, let me just back up here for a second. This was my outline for federal matchmaking. So I could do a webinar, let's say a 1-hour webinar on Teams or Zoom, and use these as my 5 main bullets throughout the 1-hour session. And so I'm recording it. I have a video just like this so people can maybe see my face. You don't have to, right? Maybe not everybody wants to be on camera, but everybody can do PowerPoint slides and share it. And so you've got these 5 bullets that are in there. And that's number 6, creating this webinar where basically you're just talking through it. And if you want, you can use ChatGPT, give it the text from your long form article and ask it to create PowerPoint slides for you. And tell it, I want 10 slides, for example, and it will create the slides for you. It is doing it based on your knowledge and your expertise that's in the anchor content, but it is just speeding up the process by creating the slides. You take its information, put it into PowerPoint, and you're off to the races with a PowerPoint deck built within minutes. I mean, literally 15 or less minutes, when in the old days you had to do a lot more activity. But that's number 6, right? Do this webinar that gets it out there. And from the webinar, you just record it on Zoom or you record it on Teams or whatever tool you have. And when you record it, you now have the video, which goes into number 7 and 8, where you can reshare that video out onto YouTube. So now it's available out there. You could also take that YouTube video and break it up into those 5 bullets that I just did. Remember, I did a webinar and here's the 5, but when I finish recording it, instead of putting one big video out there, I might break it into these 5 bullets, and now I have 5 videos that are out there, and I drop them like once a week, and so now I got 5 weeks of videos that are dropping. This is repurposing an anchor content, and this is the value of an anchor content, is you can keep reusing it. So that same thing, same set of videos can go as a website on your can go as a video on your website of the webinar, and you can do the same thing, right? You can just put it out there. Here's the video, or you can attach the video to the original blog you did, or you can break the video onto your website into 5 separate blogs that have a video of just that section, right? So you can repost this in many different ways. And while you were doing the Zoom meeting, the webinar, you're recording the audio as well. So you can take that audio and put it to a podcast, right? Like I said before, you could break that podcast up into 15-minute chunks, and now you've got 15-minute audio episodes for your podcast, 3 to 5 episodes, which is really good. So that's another way of resharing. And then as you come down to number 10, LinkedIn Shorts. This is just the idea is looking at that long form content and pulling out little snippets that are good posts that you could do in the morning saying, hey, here's a quick tip. If you want to read more, it's in the long form blog, right? Put all your content into ChatGPT and tell it, I want to get 10 posts for LinkedIn that I can put out there. I want them to be 300 words or less type thing. Same thing with number 12 or number 11, that's Twitter. You can share this out on Twitter if you're using it. And if I was using that long form content, I would tell ChatGPT, hey, write me a whole bunch of tweets that are coming from that long form content. In fact, come up with as many as you can. I put 20 there. The point that I just showed you here, though, is that I can use this anchor content. I create an anchor content, and through repurposing, I'm able to create 30 days minimum of reusable content going out. And it might take you a little bit of effort in the beginning, but so does learning to ride a bike the first time. But as soon as you do, you can ride a bike with no hands and cruise around and have a lot of fun. Well, this is the same thing. I've given you the knowledge. I want you to develop the skill. And pretty soon, you'll find that you can create one of these long form content and all the repurposable content within a single day. And now you've got 30 days of content that are helping establish your brand to your federal buyers. So just again, anchor content, it's going to help brand your company. Your brand is visibility to me, and the quality of your content is going to increase the perception of your company. So my only recommendation to you is just do it. Just try what I've talked about. Give it a shot. Ping me if you got questions. You can DM me. If you get value from this training where we provide really tactical tips, then become a sustaining member. Help us continue to do all this great training and make it available to everybody around the country. Last thing is just remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.